The cell was cold, but Daniel had been in worse places. At least it wasn't damp. He stretched his legs out, resting his back against the smooth, metallic wall, studying the room with the detached interest of someone evaluating an unfurnished apartment. No furniture, no windows, no hidden ventilation shafts big enough to crawl through. He had checked. Twice. The Drakari had impressive technology, that much was clear. The walls pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, a soft blue light shifting along their surface like living veins. The air smelled sterile, not unpleasant, but unsettlingly artificial, as if even the oxygen had been designed by committee. Somewhere in the ceiling, a faint hum vibrated. Energy fields, maybe. The door slid open with a whisper, and Queen Lyra entered. Daniel had seen her before, of course, during his capture, then again during a very formal, very condescending speech about humanity's inevitable defeat. But up close, standing a mere few feet away, he had to admit she was striking. Like a human, but not quite. Her features were elegant, sharp in a way that made him think of cut gemstones. Her skin had a faint shimmer, like light reflecting off deep water, and her eyes, dark, nearly black, were impossible to read, but it was her ears that truly set her apart. They were long, tapering to a point that twitched ever so slightly as she studied him. He could tell she expected him to cower. "Do you always make such dramatic entrances," he said, "or am I just special?" Lyra blinked once, and Daniel noted a faint crease of irritation at the corner of her mouth. "You are a prisoner of the Drakari Empire," she said, her voice like tempered steel. "I will be the one asking questions." Daniel sighed theatrically and leaned his head back against the wall. "Figures. You alien overlord types always love your monologues. Should I expect some gloating? Maybe a speech about how resistance is futile?" Lyra narrowed her eyes. "I expected more fear from you." "Oh, I'm terrified," Daniel said, deadpan. "Really? Just quaking in my boots." He lifted one foot, wiggling it for emphasis. A pause. Then Lyra tilted her head, her expression shifting from irritation to something more assessing. "You mock your situation. You're the one who kidnapped me. The least I can do is be annoying about it." She stepped closer, the soft rustle of her dark armor barely audible. "You do not seem concerned for your life," Daniel shrugged. "If I thought you were going to kill me, I wouldn't waste my best material on you." Lyra's lips parted slightly, as if about to speak, but then she stopped. He saw it, just the briefest flicker of something in her expression, something she hadn't been expecting. Interest. "Your world is lost," she said, regaining her composure. "Your people fight, but they will not win, and yet you persist." Daniel met her gaze, all humor gone for a brief, weighty moment. "Yeah, that's kind of our thing." Lyra studied him, her long fingers clasped behind her back. "And why do you fight so fiercely?" Daniel exhaled slowly, looking away for a moment, as if considering how much he wanted to give away. Finally, he turned back to her, his expression serious. "Because we have nothing to lose, and we believe in what we're fighting for." Silence stretched between them. The hum of energy fields, the distant sound of Drakari ships shifting in their docking bays, it all faded. Lyra's expression didn't change, but something in her stance shifted. Subtle, almost imperceptible. Daniel smirked. "Was that not the answer you were expecting?" The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close enough. "No," she admitted, "it was not." The lights in the interrogation chamber dimmed slightly, as Queen Lyra stood in contemplative silence. Daniel wasn't sure if that was intentional, or if the walls of this alien ship were just as moody as their queen. He watched her, arms still crossed, leaning casually against the wall as if he were waiting for an elevator instead of standing in front of an intergalactic conqueror. She hadn't spoken for a full minute, and Daniel could tell she wasn't used to being caught off guard. He took that as a small personal victory. "I must admit," Lyra finally said, her voice measured, "I expected something else." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What? Begging? Bargaining? Some impressive last words before you vaporize me?" She took a slow step closer. "Humans have always been predictable, desperate, You do not behave like them. Daniel let out a low chuckle. Maybe you've been talking to the wrong humans. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her long ears twitching. He found himself wondering if they helped her hear better, or if they were just an aesthetic bonus of her species. Either way, it was strangely distracting. You amuse yourself, she observed, watching him the way a scientist might observe an unexpectedly chatty lab rat. Even now, in the face of inevitable defeat, Daniel let out a long breath. Look, if you're trying to scare me, you're going to have to do better than that. I've worked customer service before. Something flickered in Lyra's expression. Not quite amusement. She was too composed for that, but perhaps the faintest whisper of curiosity. Inevitable defeat, she repeated, ignoring his sarcasm. I have heard humans deny it. I have heard them scream in defiance, but I've never heard one accept it with humor. Daniel shrugged. Well, you haven't been around enough of us then. See, we're pretty famous for laughing at things that should probably make us cry. If the end of the world comes, at least one idiot's going to be standing there cracking a joke about it. Probably something about free parking in the apocalypse. Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then, to his utter surprise, she turned slightly and sat down on the bench across from him, her dark armor shifting as she moved. The Queen of the Drakari, ruler of a vast and ruthless empire, was now sitting across from him, like they were about to have a casual coffee chat. Daniel blinked. Okay, didn't see that coming. You fascinate me, human, she admitted, and I am not easily fascinated. I'll add that to my resume. Lyra ignored his remark, folding her hands together. Tell me something, she said, her voice softer now, less commanding. If humanity knows it cannot win, why continue to fight? Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. You ever had a really stubborn pet? Lyra's brow furrowed. Pet? Yeah, like a dog. Or, I don't know, whatever the Drakari equivalent of a house cat is. Lyra frowned as if deeply offended by the idea that her people would keep anything as undignified as a house pet. We do not keep lesser creatures for amusement, Daniel smirked. See, right there. That's where we're different. We love keeping lesser creatures for amusement. And you know what? Those creatures are stubborn as hell. I had a dog once that would rather starve than admit he didn't like the expensive dog food I bought him. Humanity's kind of the same way. We'll fight even when we know we're outmatched. We'll fight even when it's a terrible idea. It's just in our nature. Lyra considered this, her dark eyes searching his face. You compare your people to animals. Well, if it makes you feel better, we also compare ourselves to heroes in every war story ever written, Daniel said, stretching his arms out. But yeah, the animal thing is probably more accurate. Lyra exhaled slowly. It wasn't quite a sigh, but it carried the same weight. Your kind is reckless. Daniel grinned. We prefer creative. Something in her expression shifted again, so slight that most people wouldn't have noticed. But Daniel was good at reading people, even alien ones. There was something behind those sharp, regal features. Something thoughtful. He decided to push his luck. So, let me guess, he said. You're not just here to interrogate me. You could have had one of your goons do that. You want to understand us, don't you? Lyra's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time he saw it. Hesitation. Just a flicker. I understand everything I need to know, she said smoothly. Your people are a dying species, clinging to a broken world. The Drakari will bring order where your chaos reigns. Daniel snorted. Yeah, okay. But that doesn't explain why you're still sitting here listening to me talk. A pause. Lyra glanced at the door as if considering leaving. But then, against what Daniel assumed was her better judgment, she stayed. Finally, she spoke. You are an anomaly, Daniel. Thanks, he said. I do try. She ignored his remark again. Perhaps I'm simply intrigued by why you are so unafraid. Daniel leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. Oh, I'm afraid, he said, but fear's not really the issue. It's what you do with it that matters. Lyra's expression remained unreadable, but in the dim glow of the ship's lights, Daniel could have sworn he saw the corner of her lips twitch. Not quite a smile, but close. The Drakari flagship drifted through the void, its immense form cutting through space like a blade. Inside, in a small but oddly well-lit cell, Daniel sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the ceiling as if expecting it to provide him with some form of entertainment. It did not. He sighed. So, I gotta ask, do you guys believe in decorating at all? Or is soulless metal prison chic just the standard interior design choice for evil empires? Queen Lyra, standing near the doorway, with the grace of someone who had never tripped over a loose shoelace in her life, gave him a pointed look. You are a prisoner, not a guest. Daniel grinned. Yeah, but you keep coming back to talk to me. Feels like you're having trouble deciding which one I am. She said nothing to that, which only made his grin widen. Lyra stepped forward, hands clasped behind her back, her long ears twitching slightly. Daniel had learned by now that this was a sign she was thinking, or annoyed, possibly both. You have been aboard this vessel for 4 days, she said, yet you do not show signs of psychological deterioration. Daniel smirked. That's because you haven't seen me when I'm really bored. Give me another 24 hours and I'll start talking to the walls. Lyra's expression remained unreadable. Many of your kind would have already succumbed to despair. Yeah, well, Daniel leaned back against the wall. We're a stubborn bunch. She tilted her head, studying him as if he were some particularly difficult puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Stubbornness does not explain it, nor does arrogance. You are either hiding something or you truly do not fear your situation. Daniel exhaled and rubbed the back of his neck. Look, I get it. You're used to prisoners groveling, crying, screaming. But let's be real. What's the point? If I freak out, does that change anything? Nah. If I whimper, do you let me go? Nope. So, I figure, why waste the energy? Plus, it really annoys your guards, and that's been the highlight of my week. A flicker of something crossed Lyra's face. Amusement? It was gone too quickly to tell. You truly see no way to win this war, do you? She asked, voice softer this time. Daniel met her gaze, his usual smirk faltering just slightly. If we only fought wars, we knew we could win. We wouldn't have made it this far. For the first time, Lyra seemed to consider that. A faint chime echoed through the room, and she pressed a device on her wrist. A holographic projection flickered to life in front of her, a transmission from one of her advisors. Your Majesty, General Varric requests an audience. He believes the prisoner should be... Lyra cut the message off with a flick of her fingers. The hologram vanished. Daniel arched an eyebrow. Let me guess. General Angry Face isn't happy I'm still breathing? General Varric believes in more direct methods. Ah, yes. The beat information out of the prisoner approach. Classic. Lyra folded her arms. You do not seem particularly concerned. Daniel shrugged. Well, you're still here, which means I'm still interesting enough to keep around. So, tell me, am I more fascinating than you expected, or do you just need someone to talk to? She gave him a look so unreadable, it could have been carved from stone. You are not fascinating, Daniel. You are unusual. I'll take that as a compliment. You should not. And yet, I will. A long silence stretched between them, before Lyra finally shook her head, muttering something in her own language. Daniel had no idea what she said, but he was pretty sure it wasn't flattering. Rest, she finally said. You will need your strength. Daniel frowned. That's ominous. Should I be worried? She turned to leave, pausing just before the door. Not yet. The door slid shut behind her, leaving Daniel alone once more. He leaned his head back against the wall, exhaling. Not yet, he repeated to himself. Great, just great. The next time the door slid open, it wasn't Queen Lyra standing in the entryway. Instead, Daniel found himself staring at a Drakari guard, a hulking figure clad in dark, reinforced armor, a helmet obscuring his features. The alien was built like a tank, and judging by the fact that his fists were about the size of Daniel's head, he looked like he could punch through walls for fun. Ah, Daniel said, pushing himself to his feet. I take it you're not here for a friendly chat? The guard didn't respond. Instead, he gestured for Daniel to follow. Not much of a talker, huh? Daniel mused, stretching his arms. That's okay. I can carry a conversation just fine on my own. Again, no response. Daniel sighed, falling into step beside the guard as they exited his cell. The hallways of the ship were sleek, metallic, and humming with quiet energy. Strange symbols pulsed along the walls, alien script that probably said things like no loitering or mind the airlocks. So, Daniel continued, you going to tell me where we're going? Or do I just have to assume this is a field trip to the nearest airlock? The guard grunted. Daniel blinked. Oh, wow, a response. See, we're bonding already. The guard turned his head slightly, just enough for Daniel to know he was glaring at him beneath the helmet. A few more twists and turns, and Daniel was led into a large chamber, one he hadn't seen before. It was lined with glowing panels, the ceiling high and domed. Along one wall stood several more Drakari, all of them armed, all of them watching him, with a mixture of disdain and something else, anticipation. And at the center of it all stood Queen Lyra. She was clad in something different this time, less regal, more tactical. A dark bodysuit, lined with shimmering silver veins, armored plating covering her shoulders and arms. A weapon was holstered at her hip, though she didn't seem in a rush to use it. Daniel came to a stop, folding his arms. I gotta say, when I woke up this morning, I wasn't expecting a dramatic audience. Lyra regarded him with that same unreadable expression she always wore. You are here to prove something. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what's that? That humans are excellent at awkward small talk? She ignored his sarcasm. You claim that humanity fights because it has nothing to lose, that it is in your nature to resist, even against impossible odds. Daniel tilted his head. Yeah, that sounds like me. What's your point? Lyra took a step forward. If that is true, then I wish to see it for myself. The moment she spoke, the lights in the room shifted, glowing a deep, pulsing red. A low hum resonated through the chamber, and suddenly the space behind Daniel changed. The smooth, metallic floor rippled, shifting, reshaping itself, until he found himself standing inside what could only be described as a combat arena. Daniel sighed. Let me guess. Gladiator-style battle, trial by combat, some kind of prove your worth nonsense? Lyra's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Something like that. The guard beside Daniel stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Daniel frowned. Oh, I don't like where this is going. Lyra gestured towards the massive warrior. This is Commander Valric, one of our most skilled fighters. You will face him. Daniel blinked, then blinked again, then laughed. I'm sorry, he said, still chuckling. You expect me to fight him? Valric crossed his arms. Do you fear me, human? Daniel scoffed. Yeah. You're built like an industrial refrigerator, and I'm pretty sure you could throw me across this room like a rag doll. Lyra watched him carefully. You claim that your kind does not give in to fear. Daniel exhaled. Okay, first of all, I never said that. We're full of fear. We just don't let it stop us. He turned back to Valric. Second, I feel like there's a serious size advantage going on here. Valric smirked. It will be over quickly then. Daniel sighed. Fantastic. This is how I die. Beaten to death by an alien bodybuilder. Lyra stepped closer. You will fight, Daniel. Daniel rubbed his temples. Right. Of course. Okay, quick question. Are there rules to this fight? Or are we just going straight into beat the human senseless mode? Lyra tilted her head. You are allowed to surrender. Daniel frowned. Yeah, see, that sounds suspiciously like an option that ends with me getting punched in the face anyway. Valric cracked his knuckles again. Daniel could feel the intimidation radiating off him. Daniel sighed again, shaking out his arms. All right, fine. Let's get this over with. Lyra gave a slight nod. Begin. Before Daniel could react, Valric charged, and Daniel did the only thing that made sense. He ran. Whoa! Okay, big guy. Let's... He ducked, just as Valric swung, the force of the blow whooshing past his ear like a sledgehammer. Talk about this first. Valric was fast, much faster than someone that size had any right to be. Daniel barely dodged another hit, rolling across the ground and scrambling to his feet. The Drakari watching let out low murmurs. Whether in amusement or disappointment, Daniel wasn't sure. Lyra, however, watched in silence. Daniel straightened up, catching his breath. All right, gotta think this through. He eyed Valric. No way I'm outpunching you, so strategy it is. He took a step back, then another. Valric smirked. You flee already? Daniel shook his head. Oh no, this is tactical repositioning. Valric lunged again, but this time Daniel moved with him. He ducked under the strike, rolling forward, and, by sheer luck, ended up behind him. Oh ho! Did not think that would work, Daniel said, stumbling to his feet. The crowd murmured again. Valric turned, frowning. Daniel grinned. All right, buddy. Round two? Lyra watched, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes. Just the slightest glint of intrigue. This was going to be interesting. Valric charged again, and Daniel had approximately half a second to realize how bad an idea it had been to taunt an alien warrior 3 times his size. Whoa, okay, let's not... He threw himself sideways as Valric's massive fist slammed down where he'd been standing. The impact left a dent in the metallic floor. Daniel didn't have much time to admire the property damage before he was scrambling away like a very panicked, very underqualified action hero. The Drakari spectators watched in interest, though judging by their expressions, they were just waiting for Daniel to get flattened like a pancake. He wasn't about to give them the satisfaction. You know, Daniel said, panting as he dodged another swing, for a species so advanced, I really thought you guys would be more into, I don't know, laser duels instead of old-school brawling. Valric smirked. A fight should be won with strength, not toys. Yeah, well, humans have this thing called strategy, Daniel shot back. Valric lunged. Fast. Too fast. Daniel had just enough time to realize, oh, I'm totally getting hit, before a massive fist slammed into his ribs and sent him sprawling across the arena floor. Pain. Immediate, sharp. Oh my God, why pain? Daniel wheezed, rolling onto his back, staring up at the ceiling. All right, that one hurt. Valric approached, standing over him like some smug gladiator. Surrender? Daniel groaned, pushing himself up onto his elbows. Buddy, you really don't understand humans, do you? Valric frowned. You cannot win. Daniel wiped a bit of blood from his lip. Yeah? And? He struggled to his feet, wincing. You think that stops us? Lyra was watching him carefully now. She had barely moved since the fight started, her long ears twitching occasionally in thought. Daniel took a breath, exhaled. Think. He's stronger. He's faster. But what do I have? He glanced down at the floor, the same metallic material that had shifted to form this arena. Advanced Drakari tech, which meant a plan formed. A dumb, reckless, very human plan. Daniel cracked his neck. All right, big guy. Round 3. Valric snorted and lunged. But this time, Daniel didn't dodge. He ran straight at him. A gasp rippled through the audience. Even Valric was momentarily surprised, which was exactly what Daniel needed. At the last possible second, Daniel dove between Valric's legs, skidding along the floor, and slammed his fist into a small panel embedded in the ground. The arena reacted instantly. The moment Daniel's hand connected, the Drakari technology misinterpreted his movements as an official command, because, apparently, it was very sensitive to pressure input. The smooth metallic floor shifted again, but this time not in an orderly way. The entire structure glitched for half a second before suddenly morphing into something else entirely. A wall of metal shot up between Daniel and Valric. Valric, mid-charge, slammed straight into it. Hard. There was a loud thunk, then silence. Daniel, sprawled on the floor, blinked. Huh, that actually worked? Valric, now very much unconscious, slumped forward in a heap. The audience? Dead silent. Daniel groaned, pulling himself to his feet. His ribs were screaming in pain, but he forced a grin and raised his hands. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, panting, I believe that's what we call a technical victory. A beat of silence. Then murmuring. The Drakari warriors, who had been so certain this would be an easy execution, were stunned. They weren't used to humans, weak, fragile humans, winning. Lyra, for her part, just stared at Daniel. Then, after a long pause, she let out a slow, quiet chuckle. Daniel blinked. "Did you just laugh?" She tilted her head, lips twitching. "That was unexpected?" "Yeah, well," Daniel winced, clutching his ribs. "Unexpected is kind of my thing." Two guards stepped forward, dragging Valric's unconscious form out of the arena. Daniel half expected them to turn and pummel him next, but they didn't. If anything, there was a new look in their eyes, something Daniel couldn't quite place. Respect? Curiosity? Lyra approached him slowly. "You were not supposed to win," Daniel snorted. "Yeah, well, I like breaking the rules." She studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "You fight differently from my kind. You do not rely on strength, but on unpredictability." Daniel shrugged. "Some call it that. Others call it winging it." Lyra's gaze flickered like she was seeing him in a new light. "Perhaps I underestimated you." Daniel grinned. "See? Now that's the nicest thing you've said to me all week." She exhaled, shaking her head. "Your species is strange, Daniel. And yet, here you are, still talking to me." She didn't deny it. Instead, she turned sharply and began walking away. "Come, you need medical attention." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You actually care?" "I need you alive," she replied smoothly. "For now." Daniel smirked. "Right, for now." As he limped after her, he couldn't help but feel that something had changed. Not just with Lyra, but with all of them. The Drakari medbay was far more advanced than anything Daniel had ever seen, which, considering he had last been treated by a human medic with duct tape and whiskey, was a pretty low bar. He lay on a sleek metallic examination table, as a series of floating medical drones scanned him with glowing blue lights. He had no idea what they were doing, but it felt like being judged by a group of particularly condescending robotic jellyfish. One of them let out a mechanical chirp. "Oh, come on, don't make that sound," Daniel muttered. "That's never a good sound." Lyra stood nearby, arms crossed, watching the whole process with quiet amusement. "You are remarkably intact for someone who was just thrown across an arena," she observed. Daniel groaned. "Yeah, well, I like to keep things interesting." He winced as one of the drones sprayed something cold over his bruised ribs. "So what now? Are you going to throw me into another fight? Maybe have me wrestle a Drakari war beast this time?" Lyra smirked. "Would you like that?" "I would not," Daniel replied quickly. The med drone beeped again. A holographic display appeared above Daniel, showing an anatomical scan of his body, along with a series of glowing alien symbols. Lyra studied the display for a moment. "You have 2 fractured ribs and minor internal bruising." Daniel sighed. "Great. Love that for me." She tapped the hologram, and suddenly another drone descended from the ceiling, this one carrying a strange metallic device with a pulsing blue core. Daniel's eyes widened. That thing isn't going to explode, is it?" Lyra arched a brow. "It is a tissue regeneration device." "Right, regeneration. Totally not a death ray. Cool, cool." The drone hovered closer, and before Daniel could make any more jokes, the device activated, sending a warm energy pulse through his chest. The pain in his ribs immediately dulled. Daniel blinked. "Oh, that's actually kind of nice." Lyra smirked. "Do you doubt our medical advancements?" Daniel shrugged. "Hey, forgive me for being a little nervous when alien technology gets pointed at my vital organs." She chuckled, shaking her head. "You are unlike any human I have encountered." Daniel grinned. "I get that a lot." The drone finished its work, and the holographic display flickered green, signaling his miraculously improved condition. Daniel stretched experimentally. "All right," he said, hopping off the table. "So, what now? Do I get a medal? A celebratory alien feast? Maybe a really soft bed?" Lyra studied him for a moment, her expression shifting into something unreadable. "You will accompany me." Daniel raised an eyebrow. Oh? Where to? She turned sharply and started walking. You ask too many questions, human. Daniel smirked and followed. Yeah, I get that a lot, too. The hallways of the Drakari warship were eerily quiet as Daniel trailed behind Lyra. The walls pulsed faintly with some kind of bioluminescent energy, casting soft blue and purple hues. So, Daniel started, are we heading to the bridge? The dungeon? The space equivalent of a Starbucks? Lyra shot him a look. Daniel held up his hands. Hey, just trying to set expectations. They turned a corner, and suddenly the corridor opened into a vast chamber, a massive observatory with a transparent panoramic ceiling that showed the endless expanse of space above them. Daniel stopped in his tracks, eyes widening. Whoa! Outside, he could see the vastness of the cosmos, distant stars burning against the darkness, nebulae swirling in clouds of iridescent light, and just beyond the ship's gravitational field was a planet. A dark, jagged sphere that looked partially artificial, its surface crisscrossed with massive metal constructs and glowing structures. What is that? Daniel asked, stepping closer to the transparent barrier. Lyra came to stand beside him. Drakkar Prime, the heart of my empire. Daniel let out a low whistle. Gotta say, your real estate game is pretty impressive. Lyra didn't respond immediately. She was staring at the planet with a contemplative expression. Daniel glanced at her. So, why bring me here? Thought you were still deciding whether to airlock me or not? She exhaled softly. Because I am beginning to see that there is more to your kind than I anticipated. Daniel blinked. Wait, was that a compliment? Hold on. He mimed, checking his pulse. I need to record this moment for history. Lyra shot him a look, but didn't argue. She turned back to the view of her homeworld. For generations, my people have seen humans as nothing more than an inconvenience, a minor species in the grand design of the galaxy. Daniel snorted. Ouch, harsh. But, Lyra continued, I have witnessed something I did not expect. Daniel leaned against the railing. My incredible ability to survive against all odds? Lyra smirked. Your unpredictability. Daniel grinned. See? Told you. It's our best feature. She studied him for a long moment. You fight as though you have nothing to lose. And yet, I sense that is not entirely true. Daniel's grin faltered slightly. Lyra narrowed her eyes. What is it that you fight for, Daniel? He exhaled, looking out at the stars. That's a pretty loaded question. Lyra tilted her head. Humor me. Daniel was quiet for a moment before speaking. Back on Earth, we grow up believing that we're small, that the universe is too big, too vast, and that we're just tiny little specks in the grand scheme of things. Lyra listened intently. Daniel continued, but here's the thing. Humans don't like being told they're insignificant. We fight, we push forward, we carve out a place for ourselves, even when the odds are stacked against us. He turned to her. We fight because deep down, we believe we matter. Lyra's gaze softened, just slightly. Daniel smirked. Also, because we're incredibly stubborn and don't know when to quit. Lyra chuckled. That much is clear. For a moment, they simply stood there, watching the distant stars. Then, Lyra's voice lowered. Perhaps you are not as insignificant as I once believed. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Careful, Lyra. If you keep saying nice things, I might start thinking we're bonding. She rolled her eyes. Do not push your luck, human. Daniel grinned, but as he looked at her, really looked at her, he realized something. Something had changed, not just between them, but within her. Drakkar Prime loomed below, its sprawling metallic structures and labyrinthine cityscapes, flickering under an artificial twilight. The Drakari homeworld was beautiful in its own way, monumental, precise, undeniably alien, but to Daniel, it also felt eerily empty, cold, like a world that had long since forgotten the meaning of chaos, of imperfection, of laughter. And yet, here he was, a very imperfect human, standing beside Queen Lyra, an alien monarch who, just days ago, would have considered his existence a mere inconvenience. Now, She looked at him differently. "You're thinking," Daniel observed, folding his arms. "Dangerous habit." Lyra arched a brow. "And you never stop talking. An even more dangerous habit." Daniel smirked. "Yeah, well, I like to live on the edge." Her gaze drifted back to the planet. "I have ruled my people with certainty for many years, believing we were superior, that we were destined to dominate." She exhaled slowly. "And yet, I find myself questioning whether that path is as inevitable as I once believed." Daniel gave her a sideways glance. "Oh, wow. A space queen having an existential crisis. Do I get credit for this?" Lyra shot him a look. "You are insufferable. You love it." She rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. A silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, not tense, just quiet. And then Lyra spoke again, her voice softer this time. "You fight for something intangible. That is difficult for me to understand." Daniel shrugged. "Welcome to humanity. We're emotionally complicated and make terrible life choices." He leaned on the railing. "But that's kind of the point, isn't it? We don't just fight for survival. We fight for things that seem impossible. Hope, freedom, the right to exist on our own terms." Lyra studied him. "And yet, despite your spirit, your people are weak compared to us." Daniel snorted. "Yeah, well, our survival instincts are 80% stubbornness, 15% dumb luck, and 5% coffee." Lyra smirked at that. Actually smirked. Daniel blinked. Did you just find that funny? Are you actually laughing at my joke?" She turned away. "No." "Oh my God, you totally did." "I did not." Daniel grinned. "You're getting soft on me, Queenie." She sighed, shaking her head. "Enough. You have won your survival." Daniel arched a brow. "Wait, are you saying—" "I will not execute you," Lyra said simply. "Nor will I return you to imprisonment." Daniel let out a slow, relieved breath. Damn. And here I was, starting to enjoy our heart-to-heart talks. She ignored him. "However, there is still the question of what comes next." Daniel straightened. "What does come next?" Lyra hesitated. "A rare sight. There are those among my kind who will not accept weakness, who would see my curiosity about humanity as a flaw." Daniel frowned. "So what? You start a war with your own people?" She exhaled. "Number. But I must tread carefully." Daniel scratched the back of his head. "Look, I know I'm just a scrappy little earthling, but, you do realize you don't have to be the queen that everyone expects, right?" Lyra blinked. "You think I can change my fate?" "I think fate's just an excuse we use when we're too scared to make a choice," Daniel said. "And I don't think you're scared, Lyra." For the first time, she looked genuinely uncertain, and maybe, just maybe, a little human. Another silence stretched between them. Then, finally, she sighed. "You are a most irritating creature." Daniel grinned. "I try my best." She glanced at him. "I will return you to your world." Daniel blinked. "Wait, really?" Lyra nodded. "I will find a reason to explain it to my people. Perhaps I will say I found you too much of a nuisance to keep." Daniel chuckled. "Wow, harsh." Lyra smirked. The truth, after all. He shook his head, but couldn't hide his grin. "All right, Queenie, I'll take my free pass while I can." She turned, walking toward the control panel. "There is one condition." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Oh boy, here it comes." Lyra stopped, then glanced back at him, her expression unreadable. "I wish to understand more." Daniel tilted his head. "Understand what?" She hesitated. Then, "Your kind, your world, your hope." Daniel blinked. "You're asking me to be a human ambassador?" She folded her arms. "I'm asking you to remain in contact." Daniel smirked. "Oh my God, you're going to miss me." Lyra exhaled sharply. "I should have thrown you into space when I had the chance." "Too late now," Daniel said cheerfully. "You're stuck with me." She gave him one last long look. And for the first time, Daniel saw something different in her gaze. Not disdain, not superiority, but respect. Maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something more. As the Drakari ship prepared to return him home, Daniel couldn't help but laugh. He had been captured as nothing more than a prisoner. But somehow he had changed a queen's mind, and that was the most unexpected victory of all.